Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Mentor Nation podcast. John Abbas, of course, who else is here with you? And wow, we're officially 2 weeks into 2021. And, I have this personal feeling that this is going to be a great year for any of you listening that just truly focuses on the important things, whatever your goals are, just truly focus and chip away at them little by little. I want to tell you a quick story before I bring on our incredible guest today. I remember like yesterday, starting this podcast a year ago, and I was super nervous. There's a lot of great podcasts out there, and I was just really worried that what am I going to say? I don't even know how to interview people. What equipment do I need to get? How am I going to find my voice with all of these other podcasts out there? And I remember a mentor saying the exact same thing I just said to you a year ago. He said, John, don't worry about that. He said, set a goal and just chip away little by little and stay consistent. And every single week for the last year, I've released an episode. And today, I'm not Joe Rogan, of course. I don't have his audience, but, we do have thousands of incredible listeners on the Mentor Nation podcast. I've met some of the most incredible people. I've gotten great feedback. And I can honestly tell you that it doesn't matter what your goal is for 2021. If you could just focus on the things that are important and chip away little by little consistently. You may not see results a week or two or a month or 2 months. Trust me, I know this. But after a while, you start to hit momentum. And momentum is really, it's just like compounding interest, right? Like you invest your money and you don't really see it growing, but 95% of the growth is at the very, very, very end. And it's the same way with hitting any kind of goal. And so today I want to bring on a guest that's going to really help you with a very important part of achieving goals. And that is just this individual is going to share some incredible insight on how to build rapport very quickly and influence very quickly with anyone. And he would know. And I told you all last year that my focus, especially for first quarter of 2021, is to bring on guests that really just focus on teaching you very powerful, practical strategies that you can use and apply that will help you get a result in some area of your life right away. And this guest is no different. A few months ago, I was listening to some TED Talks. I love doing that. I get on YouTube and I'll just watch TED Talks because some of the most powerful, insightful speeches I've ever heard that given me so much inspiration were watching just TED Talks. And I stumbled upon a guy. He was a world-renowned hypnotherapist. And it was just an incredible 15-minute TED Talk on how to build rapport and influence with people very quickly. And so I took a shot in the dark. I reached out to this man right after, and he responded and he agreed to be on the show. And so I'm just so excited for today. Jason Linett is a world-renowned hypnotist. He's also the author of a book called Work Smart Business: Lessons Learned from Hypnotizing 250,000 People and Building a $1 Million Brand. He's dedicated the last 20 years of his life to discovering exactly how hypnosis can quickly and effectively and permanently rewrite negative limiting beliefs, which we all have. And he's used that wisdom to help entrepreneurs all over the world. He's built a great big business for himself, and it's awesome. So today in this interview, Jason shares some of those nuggets from that TED Talk on just simple, powerful techniques that you can use to build rapport and build influence very quickly with people that maybe you know or maybe you've just met. So it's really awesome. If you're watching or listening, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you get notified. And without further ado, please help me welcome Jason Linett to the show. Jason, we are live. Man, listen, I want to welcome you to the Mentor Nation podcast. I'm very excited to have you on today. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I am very excited for an interesting episode today. You are by far the first hypnotist I've ever had on the show. I have had a magician. I haven't released the episode yet. That was a super cool episode, but I'm really excited just to dive in to your work and what you do and how you help entrepreneurs. But you're not just a hypnotist. You are, if I'm quoting this right, a hypnotic influence expert. So can you just explain a little more about exactly what that is?
Sure, absolutely. And what happened was that I had began my career in hypnosis working with people one-to-one for like personal change, what would be considered, let's say, hypnotherapy. So helping someone to overcome a fear, helping someone to change a series of habits, working even with the athlete, something more, let's say, performance enhancement. And the side note to the story, and this may have been the side effect of growing up in a family where everyone was an entrepreneur. So the whole idea that it had to be hard to start up a business was something I was never taught. So I just assumed you get out there and you make it happen. And I did. And so what happened though was when I first opened up shop, I was getting all this negativity from a place of a caring attitude of people going, it's going to be slow your first year. No one's going to come to see someone without testimonials or reviews. And I just refused to buy into that premise. So 3 months later, I was then invited to then start to teach people who had been doing hypnosis longer than I'd been alive at that point how to better run their businesses.
Wow.
So the nature of a potential client reaching out to me, what do we do in the 21st century? We Google people to check up on them. And what this turned into organically was, here was my client who happened to be a business owner coming in to resolve, let's say, a fear of public speaking as they were doing more keynotes and more sales presentations. And because they saw that I was also teaching principles of ethical influence and positive persuasion, basically applying the same language patterns that we use in hypnosis to facilitate a change. Well, imagine what happens when we apply those ethically and appropriately to the sales process.
Right.
So this kind of comes around to, I'm working with a doctor who was coming to see me as a client, that as the insurance model was changing, she wanted to do more public speaking to bring in the right clientele. And the second presentation, the second session, she comes in with a sort of binder and she goes, could you look at my talk? Like, what? She goes, yeah, I heard you on one of your podcasts talk about opening in a way that grabs people's attention.
Right.
I don't think I'm doing that. And suddenly it launched, and this is years ago now, we launched into this sort of hybrid approach where on one part it was resolving the fear, but on the other side, okay, well, take the story, open with that story. That's going to excite the auditory, visual, and kinesthetic aspects of their mind.
Right.
Now do this in the next phase and only then introduce yourself. And that's where it began to become the game of just simply listening to an audience. So nowadays, the catchphrase is, your business can change people's lives, but perhaps you don't yet have the right words to inspire them to take action. Well, think about what will happen with a few hypnotic language hacks to speak with greater influence.
Gotcha. So I've always wondered this. I mean, I have attended many hypnosis shows, and I've always been skeptical and I've even negative, but over the years I've started to learn and I've started to become so fascinated with it because if just, there's simple techniques in tapping into subconscious, and I'm a big fan of Think and Grow Rich, the book, and the power of auto-suggestion. And I just think
we don't use the word transmute enough anymore. Am I right?
Sexual transmutation. Absolutely. That's like, it was in that.
Some of the references need to be updated, but yes.
That's exactly right. But how, I want to ask you, what exactly is hypnosis?
Yeah. So first of all, let's address the stage side of things, which I have to give the disclaimer of, quote, depending on the skills of the hypnotist. Because there's some of those presentations which might as well just be Simon Says. And it's not that they're prompting people just to simply play along. It's that, again, depending on the skills of the hypnotist, I think you'll get the point when I say they're not just memorizing pattern and playing a numbers game. It's instead, let's say, working with a group of 20 individuals as if they were 20 people, which, for what it's worth, one of the modern godfathers of hypnosis was a man by the name of Dave Ellman. And he was a vaudeville entertainer that after one of his shows, they're knocking on the door and it's two doctors going, we want you to teach us medical hypnosis. Dave goes, I'm an entertainer. And they go, yes, but we just saw you hypnotize 20 people in 90 seconds. As early as the 1940s, you've got 8 minutes in the room with a patient, make it count. We think the model of hypnosis you do is better for our medical model. And that started the legacy of the non-medical person teaching the hypnotic work. The actual definition, credit to the gentleman whose story I'm telling, his name was Dave Ellman, who passed away in the 70s, though his son is alive and well and still teaching to this day. It's the bypassing of that critical element of your mind and the acceptance of selective thinking elsewhere in the mind. That's a lot of technical jargon. Let's break it down. So you're driving in your car. You're thinking of everything other than driving your car. You still end up where you would like to go. You're watching a movie, you know it's all fiction, they're actors dressing up and pretending, and we still get swept up in the story. But let's take this into the context, let's say, of a personal change. I mentioned the public speaking. She was a medical doctor with an incredible expertise. And yet, as she put it, I'm shaking like I'm back in my third grade math class. There's a reason the environment of the room was set up. I'm the one speaking because I'm the one qualified to give this talk. She knew that. And yet here was this fear pattern saying otherwise.
Right.
So it's where to these people I'd kind of playfully say, well, congratulations, you're kind of already doing hypnosis. Let me show you how to do it better. So in terms of a business application, it comes to the ability to create new belief systems in someone's mind. And everything is always from the principle of ethical influence and positive persuasion. So there's going to be checkpoints inside of a business application that if something is aligning with what they're looking for, they're going to keep engaging. They're going to keep watching. And if it's not what they're looking for, they have an easy exit point to leave the process behind. So as we bring the word influence into the process, influence is the ability to set a different measurement, to set a new belief system in place, even before we communicate. So it's where people who are doing, let's say, content marketing would often run into the conflict that they finally make the sales offer, but now the audience has been trained to get everything for free. And this is coming from someone who's put out free stuff for years. Let's embed inside of our communication the logical next steps. So it's, again, that bypassing of that critical awareness to go after that emotional appeal and to help people achieve results faster and easier.
Man, that's so fascinating to me. Like just learning all about that is, how do you even get certified in something like that? Is there schools for this?
Yeah. So the training of it is something that, again, I mentioned the legacy of the practitioner, Dave Ellman.
Yep.
So that's where hypnosis really broke off as its own separate and distinct profession. And really, it's organized by private groups that have their own advisory boards and monitor in terms of what the practice and what the study of that is. One of the major organizations nowadays is a group called the ICBCH, the International Certification Board of Clinical Hypnotherapists, which that's a lot of letters. Yeah. And I've called that out as now as being the director of membership for that group as well. So under a different arm of what I do is what's called Work Smart Hypnosis, which is where I do trainings. I got the award years ago of Instructor of the Year, and actually now helping to co-organize the program that actually now certifies other practitioners to then also become instructors too. So basically arming them with the skills to do that. So really it's organized by private groups nowadays. And the sort of nod to the fame of it is that there's the legacy of Ellman, who I mentioned earlier, where I'd be teaching a class. We just wrapped up a class actually last night. And in that group, here the two of us are teaching that event, and there's several medical doctors in the group, as again, hypnosis broke off as its own separate and distinct thing.
That's so cool. So I want to shift this interview a little bit toward really helping the audience. And I was doing a lot of research on you, and you may not know this, but the Mentor Nation podcast, like my vision when I first started this was to take, because I've attended a lot of events, you know, Tony Robbins. And I mean, and for me personally, the most value that I've ever gotten out of anyone, an author or a speaker, is in a keynote speech. You know, I could read their books, and in the back of my mind, I realized why, right? Because they're paid so much money. They have such a short window of time. And so they have to prepare, and they're like, okay, how can I serve 10,000 people in 45 minutes and earn this $250,000 or $50,000 or whatever? And so, you know, I was watching your TED talk, and it was fantastic. 11 minutes. I took a page of notes. And I want to ask you, because that's what I wanted the theme of today's interview to be about, is to get into some of the valuable nuggets that you shared in that. But I wanted to ask you, you know, there's a million things that you could have talked about in your TED talk. Why did you choose building rapport or shifting the way you think about rapport?
Yeah, and thank you for that. The theme of the event was human connections. And I have to credit the author of the book Fascinate. Her name is Sally Hogshead, which is an amazing name. I saw her at a conference with a t-shirt that said, "It's a 40-gallon barrel. What does your name mean?" Which, enough said. But I heard her, you mentioned keynote. I saw her years ago at the Traffic and Conversion Summit that's out in San Diego. And a big theme she hit was that different is better than better. So I kind of appropriately broke the application system to first of all get the talk. But really at the time, I had the idea of something I wanted to present, this category of building rapport. And many people, I'm sure, in your audience are familiar with some of these concepts, that if I use similar words as you, if I use similar mannerisms, the sort of bastardization of this is that, oh, that means you're going to like me and you're going to buy my stuff. Well, probably not, it turns out, if it's done from that perspective. The original intention of that work was research all around, if I can step into your model of the world, I can find a better way to serve you and better communicate with you on that emotional mind connection. So what happened was, here was the application, and I sent a private message to the people organizing the event to go, you're doing an event on human connection. What if I could do a talk on the value of breaking rapport? And I got this long pause followed by, go on. Because here's what's missing from that dialogue.
Right.
We should not just blindly build rapport and create that positive, let's say, affinity, another word for rapport, with the entire person, because chances are you've got your business, I've got mine, the listeners out there know what they do. And in most cases, this is where the sales conversation becomes a noble equation, because we're always moving towards a solution. The reason why someone is reaching out to us is they're in a place of conflict. They have a problem. There's something they need to resolve. And thereby reaching out to a product or service will answer the question, will help them to resolve that issue. Even if it's simply standing in line at the post office to mail a box, as I did yesterday to Rhode Island. And I'm assuming it's wonderful up there, but I'm kind of busy this week. And for $6, I don't have to go. Yeah, I'll wait. How do I feel about people complaining about the post office?
Yeah.
That's the answer. So the idea of, again, going into the specifics of the adjustment is to say, what would happen if I build rapport with you in the direction you wish to go? And anyone who does any bit of consulting or sales would run into this specific pattern. And this was the catalyst for that talk. You ask somebody, how would you like that situation to be different? What kind of changes do you want to see in your business in the coming year? And what happens is they pause and they genuinely start to look around inside of their brain and they start to tell you a story. And the story is probably about some conflicting moment that they've been facing, which is really helpful, but they're not answering your question.
That's right.
So to look at how we can look at that situation and find a way to, again, the modifying word is always that of respectfully, to respectfully, let's say, interrupt the frequency of what's been there so far, bringing them right back on track toward that mutual positive outcome, because now we've got something we can work on. You know, I never want to use this negative phrase to a prospect of mine that, okay, well, we can sit here and convince each other why this is impossible to solve even further, or we can work on the solution. Don't say that. You'd be a jerk. It's instead to look at how we can move towards that positive outcome. So think of it as, I use the phrase of a propulsion system. We are now moving and directing that positive affinity energy in the direction as to why they're reaching out for us, why they're connecting with us. So that's really what that was about do this with intention rather than just, oh, I heard this was helpful.
Gotcha. So, because obviously most of the listeners to this are entrepreneurs, and building rapport is kink. I mean, that's where all of your money, your revenue. And I know a lot of people listening are like me. You know, we are under the impression that building rapport is this really long, arduous process that sometimes takes years. And you had shared some really cool strategies in your talk about how you can build that rapport very quickly. And it's some things that I've heard before, like reading like NLP, like mirroring and matching, but your take on it was really powerful. And I honestly, I always thought, I'm like, there's no way that this is going to have real effect, right? Like if they move their left hand, I move my left hand, but you went into such a detail, and I thought that was so fascinating. And I wanted to see if you could just share that with everybody listening today.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that too. So yeah, it's something that we would easily dismiss because it sounds so simple. Yet the key thing to remember is that these are not methods that were invented by somebody. These were methods that were discovered by tracking people who were already in a positive bond with each other. And I referenced in that talk the fact that there's research around in psychology They were trying to play a game of what was the most effective psychological intervention. Was it regressive counseling? Was it ego state therapy? Was it acceptance and commitment behavior? Was it cognitive behavioral therapy? And the answer they could only reach was, depending on the rapport between the practitioner and the client, was directly proportionate to the quality of the outcome, which a friend of mine has an unfair paraphrase of. It means you can be a good person and do slightly sloppy results, a slightly sloppy technique and still get results. I tend to say still do what you do exceptionally. So
right. So you're saying, and I don't mean to interrupt you.
Oh yeah,
You're
go for it.
saying that all of these therapies are powerful, but like 85% of it is the relationship and the connection between the person and the therapist, and only a small percentage, 15%, is the actual therapy itself.
Well, I'm not saying that. These were the studies from University of Washington, Brigham Young University, which verified that consistently themselves. So part of it, exactly what you mentioned there, in terms of, let me adopt some of their mannerisms. And I've now nicknamed this dipping into the rapport bank, just because that just sounds so fun, which is that I'm asking myself, what frequency, what rhythm are you running at? And it's not that I'm going to adopt a mannerism speaking in a dialect that you have, but instead I may slow down my pace to kind of match the rhythm at which you're speaking. Dipping into the rapport bank, here are certain gestures that you start to use, and I'm going to find a way to, or here's the key thing, organically blend those into the conversation. So it comes down to our movements. It comes down to our choice of words. In a personal change example of this, years ago, a guy came into my office and said, yes, when I travel, when I get onto an airplane, I have such a horrible feeling of trepidation. And honestly, in the back of my head, I thought, oh, great, now I have to use that word for the next hour and a half. Which is a funny way of explaining it, that, again, that was part of, let's get scientific here, that's part of his neurology, his representations. Let's kind of level this up, though, because this is where some of the linguistic patterns come into play. Because now if I can simply set the frame for the conversation in advance, that can establish rapport just as powerfully as the physical mannerisms as well. That we're often led to believe that we have to do all this foundational slow work of engaging in a dialogue and getting to know, like, and trust each other before I could ever go, hey, here's my product, here's how to buy it. It's where if I can pre-frame the dialogue in a very organic way, there's a couple of things to unpack in what I'm about to share. Sure. But let's imagine that I have my accelerator program, which is my private consulting, and you've watched a video on my website, you've then scheduled time with me. And as it is in the standard application funnel, which is very popular nowadays, you've answered a few questions before we get on the call, which now means as soon as we're on the call, and this is going to be helpful to anybody who's ever been cautious about making an offer, anybody who's going, yeah, but I don't like selling people. Well, here's how we can get permission to do that in advance in a very organic way, which would be that, hey, John, thank you so much for scheduling time. And just first of all, to check in, is this time still good for you to chat for a few moments?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get a yes to that because obviously you wouldn't have taken the call. Followed up by, so the way that this obviously works is we'll talk through what your goals are. I'll then further explain what I do. And if I'm confident that I can help you out, I'll explain how we can get started. Make sense?
Yep.
And the answer is very obviously yes, because, well, what else would you do? But here's the couple of things inside of that. One, the framing in advance kind of set the map for where we're going to go in the conversation. We're going to talk about what you've shared. I'll explain what I do. And if I'm confident that I can help you out, I'll explain that we can get started. Make sense? Which for anybody in any kind of service-related business, what questions would they typically ask? How many sessions is this? How much is it? Because they don't yet know what criteria to make the decision on. But in this little bit of an opening frame, I can establish even deeper rapport, because now clearly you're talking to a person who has an expertise into how this conversation should play out. We have a natural roadmap of where we'd like to go, which gave me permission in advance to then make a pivot later on to go, so here's how we can work together. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Here's how much it is. Would you like to get started? There's two little sneaky things inside of it embedded inside. So the way that this obviously works is we're going to talk about what your goals are. And in the beginning of it, I have just dropped the powerful phrase, "This obviously works." Can you all hear the smile on John's face right now? The other part is a kicker at the end. And then if I'm confident I can help you out, I'll explain how we can get started, which by all means. And I had someone just the other day that I referred to someone else because on a hypnotherapy side of things, I went, you know what? You're using a lot of medical terms. Here's a person I know who's a medical doctor who does that work. Here, call her. She's a better fit. So I'm by no means, ashamed of sending someone else because I can serve them better. But inside of that opening pre-frame, that opening preamble, what happened? I established authority by setting a foundation for the initial consult. I dropped in the phrase, "This obviously works," which is probably a question in their mind for any service that's out there.
Right.
And even in advance, I dropped the hint that I'm confident I can help you. And then I'm only going to make the offer if that's still true, at what point I may bow out if I'm not. So the ability to then frame the conversation in advance, then on top of that, as we're in that interaction, model the words, model the mannerisms, it becomes an entire system now of creating that bond with someone new.
Man, that's incredible. And just everything you're talking about is why I feel like entrepreneurs have to continue to grow their skill set, because there are people out there that they're learning this stuff and they're using it to get results. It's just like marketing, right? It's like people don't want to embrace marketing, but it's the people that understand retargeting and in the pixel and how to, it's like you can avoid it all you want, but there are people that are embracing it and they're learning these things that you're talking about to do in a week or in a conversation, what is taking you a year to do to succeed. And it's proven. And it's just like, man, stop fighting it and start embracing this stuff, man. It's just so fascinating to me.
Well, look at it too from the mindset that, yes, we can retarget, which for those who might not know yet what that is, you look at a product, you don't buy it, you start to see ads for it. And it's not that I can't say the word because there's one next to me, but the Amazon device that has a female name, we'll just call it that. It's not that it's always listening in. It's that you went to the website and you didn't hit the confirmation page, which then triggers an advertising campaign. And by the way, retargeting is a gorgeous, gorgeous thing. However, still, to quote Gary Vaynerchuk, as we often do, that you're still day trading attention. And to suddenly be there, if it's a video ad and it's, "Hey, I'm Jason and I help people do this." What happens instead if we can start to, again, bypassing critical faculties of the mind? What if there were 4 magic words that we grew up hearing that did that? Once upon a time, which probably doesn't fit for most people's business. But to kick off a video by inviting someone to be swept up into a story, where all of a sudden, like most movies nowadays, suddenly something's going on and you're slowly figuring out what's going on. The way that if you go back and watch movies from the 1940s, they communicated in a way that no one ever spoke. "John, it's so good to be here on the afternoon of your father's birthday, celebrating the wedding of your daughter," said nobody ever. Instead, we're swept up into the experience. So then to have that opportunity, we get the tech stuff in order where now someone who hasn't yet bought from us starts to engage with more material. But the question is now, how do we get them to stick? How do we, as I say, invite them to care before we ever ask them to listen, before we ever ask them to buy? Again, back to rapport. It's all about relationships.
That's awesome. Was the hero's journey? That's
one such example of that.
Yeah, really. I'm a big Russell Brunson fan. I just love his stuff. That's fantastic. So, I want to ask you, is there anything else like because you work with entrepreneurs all the time, what are some of the really big problems that you see that are very common that you help them overcome pretty quickly? It's kind of like an effortless thing for you. But it's very common when you're working with people trying to level up their business.
I'd say that so often they're either selling the wrong product or they're trying to sell too quickly. The best business lesson I learned was, this goes back to, I think, 2006. And I was at a networking event and a guy got up and goes, "I got a video phone, $600. If you want to buy a video phone, see me after the meeting." And you wouldn't be surprised to hear that he was then in the parking lot after the event complaining to his girlfriend, "This meeting's stupid. I'm not coming back." Well, it's not the platform, it's the strategy. His offer was not good. Later on, I was at another networking event. This company doesn't exist anymore because you and I are on Zoom and we don't need this thing anymore.
That's right.
But someone got up and goes, who do you know that has family members in other countries that are not tech savvy? We sell this video phone that's hardwired into the software of another one. You open it up, it rings Opa and Oma in Germany, and it just works. It's $600. However, as a Christmas bonus, when you buy one for me, we'll ship a second one for free to your family member wherever they are in the world. And what happened? She had a line after the event. Now, this is a product we don't need anymore because smartphones have the Jetsons quality of video.
That's right.
So what it comes down to is give people a reason to listen before you ever ask them to care. And the time that we're recording this is kind of a perfect time zone for this, because probably this week, 17 years ago, I did not go up to this girl at my college and say, you and I are going to have children. Now that we've been together 17 years and married for 12 of them, it might have worked because I get her better sense of humor now better. However, that would have been creepy back then and might have resulted in a case in the face. So don't do that. But I see people who are trying to go direct to offer right away. Recognize that people are on a journey, and it's the old formula back to the rapport of know, like, and trust.
That's right.
And not until we have those steps in order can we ever go into buy. The same as anybody who's ever been inside of BNI, Business Networking International. They teach the same principle, just with fancier words: visibility, credibility, profitability. So I think too many people jump to the question of, what can I sell them? And I think the better question first is, what can I give them? And so letting that become the foundation of the relationship, where you kind of want to do, as Dr. Robert Cialdini calls it in his book, Influence, activating that sort of reciprocity factor. But really what you want to have happening is that if this stuff is this good, I bet if I pay for it, I get something even better. And as long as that's true, you've got a formula there for success. So I tend to say we should only ever be selling one thing in our business. And the one thing we should be selling is the next step. Whether the next step is schedule time to have a conversation about this, whether the next step is click here for a free preview of what you're going to learn inside of my program. It's where, again, I purposely give references and credit where it's due. The work of, what was his name? Dr. Leo Marvin, who wrote an incredible book in the psychology profession about breaking massive goals down to smaller, easy to win components. And it's where some people in your audience are now laughing, because that was the name of Richard Dreyfuss's character in the movie What About Bob?
I love that movie.
Baby steps onto the dock, baby steps onto the boat, baby steps, and so forth.
You actually kind of sound like Richard Dreyfuss in that movie. Has anybody ever told you that? Like, that's...
You're making me sidebar here, but one time a friend sent me a recording of Max Brooks, the son of Mel Brooks, and said, just listen to this. I'm like, yeah, I get it. The cadence. I'm like, okay, we're brother from another mother, as it were. So, but the opportunity to, again, ask yourself what we call the state chaining sometimes in hypnotic communication. What are the mental hurdles that someone has to pass before they're ready to go? Yeah, the credit card number is 481, and they're now reading things off because they're ready to buy. Ask yourself what sort of mental triggers, what social proofs have to be established. So the biggest thing is that of breaking down the process, which the beauty of this becomes, we're talking a classic funnel mindset, but now even better, position yourself at the end of the funnel. So this is where we can use technology, webinar, a book, a video sequence, an ebook, a PDF download, whatever it might be, to further educate. So now people are ready to take the next step when it's right for them.
That's really powerful. I love just your whole philosophy on and rapport, and just the subconscious in general. You know, I was interviewing a magician a couple weeks ago, like we spoke at in the very beginning, and he said something 3-4 times in the interview. And it was kind of creepy, but powerful. He's just like, you know, magic is all about the art of misdirection. And then he kept saying that there is like this much difference between the world's greatest leader and the world's most evil person. It's just intent. And like he kept saying that, and all the strategies that he teaches, it's all in how you use them. And I just thought it was really fascinating, because, you know, the work that you do can be used for so much good, which is what you're using it for, to help people and to understand how people think. And and how they are and take them through that journey and to be, and it's a win-win, it's using it for the right purposes. And I think it's really powerful.
Well, it's the metaphor of a hammer. We could use a hammer and someone's got a back deck on their house and the nails are kind of creeping up with age. We could take the hammer and we can hammer those nails down. And now it's safe to go out there and walk barefoot once again. Clearly, the hammer could be used for some sort of ill effect. As we're talking about influence and positive persuasion, there's two realities around this. First of all, it turns out it takes a lot more effort to use these things badly. And remember that in business, towards like someone's ill effect, like not in a positive way. And the benefit becomes that so much of what we can do, though, is based upon the long-term business success model. No matter how good your advertising is, no matter how good your marketing and your targeting is, if you've got a loyal base of raving fans, that's what's going to drive everything so much better than anything else. So to have that mindset towards that long-term relationship, that I had a student the other day who someone was unhappy with the deliverable of a product that he had produced, to which I go, it's a fall on your sword moment. That I'm seeing some of the quotes from the email. I don't think you're going to win. I think you should do this. Send them a physical copy of the product by mail on a USB drive and refund their money. But then I've lost the money. I go, how much have you earned on that product this year? And it turned out to be about 40 grand of that product. So to refund this person $297 as it was, I'm like, take it. The result of this has already begun to play out. This person who clearly, let's say it politely or really impolitely, was probably one of those people who goes to restaurants to complain about the service.
Yep.
Hate the food before it even comes out. And he completely inoculated that by going, I'm so sorry. And the issue was, she might have been in an area where the internet was not as strong. He wasn't on a platform that could buffer the videos. It just wasn't working for her, which was a fair complaint. Learning an online program may have been a challenge there. So what did he do? He took the recommendation. He refunded the money. He mailed the person a USB flash drive. This person could have been out there spreading an ill message as to what he did. All of a sudden now he can count so many new people who have come into his program because she's out there now as a raving fan. That's where we ought to be focusing our attention, that anybody can sell something once. And it's where I can get the payment for something, but by having that person out there who has been successful and who can now, it's not the students sitting at the feet of the master looking up and going, look how smart he is. It's where I can look at what some people have done. I got called out by a student the other day because they go, you haven't taught that sequence, but you keep using it. Oh, which here it is. It doesn't have a name yet. As of now, I'm calling it's not about, but it is. Here's the sequence. And mathematically, it's not about X, though we are going to X. It's really about Y so that you can Z. And this is a formula that helps people break out of a rhythm of going, wow, that's a lot more money than I was expecting to spend. I was on the phone with a student who does credit repair.
Yep.
And he realized a problem as people kept coming back to him. Which sounds good, but that means they didn't learn their lesson in terms of getting into a bad financial situation. And he was struggling with, how do I now upgrade these people into a consulting program? And the languaging became this exact routine. It's not about X, though we're going to X. It's really about Y so that you can Z. And what that turned into, well, it's not just about repairing your credit, though we are going to repair your credit. It's also about teaching you new principles and respect for the value of money so that you never need a service like mine ever again. And suddenly, I know, right? Which we can apply that. It's not just about getting the moisture out of your basement, though we are going to change the humidity factors in your basement. It's also about rebuilding the structure of the walls so that you don't have to make use of this type of service ever again. Or it's really about changing the air within that space so you and your family can enjoy that room throughout the entire year.
Man, that's such good stuff.
I know, right?
To say, expand on something you said earlier with the referral and doing the right thing and refunding your money. And I don't know if Starbucks invented it. I'm sure it's been around a long time, but they had this philosophy that Howard Schultz would teach his people. And it would be, somebody that loves your product will like recommend 3 people. Somebody that hates it will tell like 50 people or 10 people. It's like, it's so much more publicity negative than it is positive. So you just have to do the right thing, even though you may not want to. So
which everybody right now, think of your favorite restaurant and go online right now and leave a review for them. Do something good out there. Leave more positives than you leave negatives.
absolutely.
Rant over.
Absolutely. So Jason, for anybody that's listening to this that loves your message, wants to hear more of it, follow your work, digest your content, look at some of the services or maybe how you can help them, where can they go to follow you? Where can they go to connect with you?
Yeah, I'll point to two easy places. One is that I do a podcast called Hypnotic Language Hacks that goes out every week, new episodes everywhere you can find podcast, even over on YouTube. We produced a video. Just simply do a search for Hypnotic Language Hacks. You'll easily find it. And then to track me down, head over to jasonlinett.com. That's one N, two T's. Don't put any extra letters at the end, though, to be safe. I own all the misspelled versions of my name, and they point to the right place. But I'm sure John will put it in the show notes here. When you're there, that's the home base of the podcast. But click over to the Business Influence Systems page, because there's an opportunity there to actually learn what I call my video influence system. Just go through the sequence on that page. That's going to teach you a simple 7-step program you can apply to any video you produce to, again, have people wanting more from you even before you make an offer. That's at jasonlinett.com.
Awesome. I'll put all of these links in the show notes. It was a pleasure. I was laughing because you said you own all the misspellings to your name. It was, and I can't remember who the opponent was. And I don't know if you saw this, but when Trump was running for 2016 election, there was some opponent he was going up against. I can't remember who, but the guy didn't think to own his own domain. And do you remember that when you put in his name and you go to the website, it's Donald Trump's like vote for Trump.
I'm trying. I know the story. Yes.
It wasn't like McCain. I can't remember who, but it was the funniest thing I had ever seen in my entire
my head. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Which you think that means it works.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, man, it's been a pleasure. I've really, really enjoyed this. And man, I hope I can have you back on again in the future and we can dive in or take a deep dive into just one of the other topics that you're just fantastic at. You know, just following your work has been awesome. I highly encourage everybody listening, make sure you roll over, subscribe to his podcast, subscribe to his YouTube channel, you know, check out his work. And man, thank you again for your time, brother. It was an absolute pleasure having you on today.
It's been awesome being here as well. And I tend to say, change your words, change your business, change your life.
Awesome. Thank you.